Hey guys, Alex and Dan from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around we finished up the Dominators with parts 4 and 5. What happened in those?
Well, remember the dominating... I never can remember their name, the species, the aliens.
They're just the Dominators.
Just the Dominators. All right, well anyway, they're on this planet, they're looking for fuel, and apparently what they're going to do is literally blow up the planet in some manner, volcanically or otherwise, to make the dust radioactive, and then they're going to collect that and use that as fuel. Anyway, the Doctor can't allow that to happen. Jamie and some of the other people who have resisted becoming rebellious, even after the Quarks kill one of their leaders, they ultimately realize this is the only way they're going to get out of it, and the big bomb is set to go off, and the Doctor can't figure out anything else to do with it, so he throws it back onto the Dominator ship, and as they take off, it blows up and kills them all.
Right.
Rather cruel ending, but I mean, there was no other way. I mean, it was the Doctor and the planet, or the Dominators themselves, and he chose that way.
Yeah. So that was pretty much that one. This time around, we're moving on to The Mind Robber, which is 5 episodes long, but for some reason, some of them are shorter by a few minutes. So we've actually gotten requests to do this all in one go, actually.
Well, so that would basically just be like 4 parts if we see them all together. So
yeah,
not too bad.
It's essentially the length of a 4-parter.
And I am out of school. We are now we're recording this the last weekend of May. I've just completed my 26th year as a teacher, and so I'm relaxed. I'm off for the summer.
Yeah. So, of course, I'm never off for the summer because YouTube doesn't allow time off at all. So, yeah. But still, we can easily go through all 5 episodes today. So, I guess that's basically that. You got anything else?
Not at the moment.
Then let's go ahead and start The Mind Robber. Here we go.
Oh my word! Come on, Jamie, into the TARDIS, quickly!
Not another mountain of goo.
Nah, I think it's just the volcano.
Listen, will you two stop gaping at that and get us out of here? Don't worry, Jamie, we're safe in the TARDIS. Are you sure? Well, I mean, has a TARDIS ever been buried up to its neck in lava before? Well, no. Well, how can you be so sure we're going to be all right?
That's a good point.
Well, there is an emergency unit, but... Oh, no, I can't possibly use that.
But this is an emergency!
But it moves the TARDIS out of the time-space dimension, out of reality. Oh, fine. Reality's getting too hot anyway.
This is just a thing he's had all this time?
All right.
An escape pod?
Oh.
Into an alternate reality or an alternate dimension?
An escape pod that takes the ship you're escaping? Well, it seems to have held up all right.
I suppose he means that outside the TARDIS now is nothing. Just nothing.
I mean, he did say you're leaving reality.
And I suggest you do the same.
Doctor?
Well, what's happened?
Oh, nothing. It's all exactly the same.
Oh, good, good.
You're worried by something, Doctor?
New
What
room
is
we've
it?
never seen.
Worried? No.
Well, yeah.
No.
It's been a while since we've been around the
It's
TARDIS.
unknown that worries me, Zoe.
But, Doctor, I still think we should go out and see.
Zoe, we must stay in the TARDIS.
You know one thing we should worry about? Whatever dress she's wearing.
Making him think he's at home.
Either that, or he just found the Doctor's supply of Scotland VHSs.
Which didn't exist at this time. Or
True.
If they were, they weren't commercial.
Well,
It can't be Jamie.
Aye, it's switched up all right.
It's the city. My home.
the city, the only city in the universe.
It was there.
Yeah, I know, Scotland.
No, it was quite plainly... Oh, anyway, we've both seen something, so that proves we've landed, doesn't it?
It'd be funny if she was from
Let's
future
go out
Scotland,
and see.
despite the
not
fact that
without
she's
the
not
Doctor.
future Scottish.
Oh, all right.
Aye.
Oh, never leave the new girl alone.
Nah.
Who are you?
Well, if you're seeing your home, are they Gallifreyan?
Where are you?
Maybe he would see Gallifrey.
Zoe!
soundstage.
Zoe!
We're lost, aren't we?
No, I wouldn't say that. We just, well,
So you should have tied one string to the TARDIS and then just had a rope.
a city like that doesn't just disappear, does it?
But it is out there!
It's not,
Except
so you
Brigadoon.
know it isn't.
No.
No, but it's there.
No, Jamie, it's not!
I must...
No, Jamie, no!
Oh, what do you do? What's her name?
I don't know. But they don't look very friendly. Oh,
Well, they're tall.
Well, they're a cross between the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Quarks.
well, we're safe enough back in the TARDIS, aren't we?
Yes, possibly. What's that? I don't know. Oh, it's not the TARDIS going wrong again. No, we're on our way, all right, but trouble is I don't know where to. Well, that's not unusual. Let just...
Okay.
Well, that can't be good.
Okay.
That's the first episode.
So, somebody has discovered psychedelics.
Yeah. I mean, once I got back into the TARDIS, I was kind of thinking like, well, maybe the TARDIS is an illusion. They're not in the actual TARDIS.
Yeah.
They're still in the void, I guess.
That seems to be the most logical explanation.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's not a ton like you could really speculate on this one, especially if it's all illusions. So it is interesting, that they all sort of see things and hear things. The Doctor has a voice in his head. Zoe sort of sees her home. I like, even though it's exactly the same as Zoe's, Jamie sees his home. He seems to just be more haunted by Scotland than anything else. Although a unicorn, did the Scottish
No.
I mean, obviously, yeah, but are the Scots normally associated with unicorns? All right, I was just checking. Now it's interesting, when they have the, I guess the concept of the void, because they'll bring that back in other like modern Doctor Who episodes where it's just the nothingness between universes, and only certain ships have to be built in order to survive in the void, and it makes sense that the TARDIS would. So it's a good concept for the episode. It's just a bit strange. I actually remember someone saying, when people were asking us to do all 5 of these in one video, that it's either we do all 5 in one video, or we do the first episode and then in the next video do the other 4. I don't know what we would have talked about if it was just this episode.
Yeah. Very short discussion.
It would have been a very short video if that were the case.
Now, I will speculate that the voice the Doctor was hearing in his head was his own voice. That sounded a lot like him.
Yeah.
But is that actually his subconscious, or just whoever the alien influence is using his voice?
Yeah, it could be like that.
And then, of course, we've got the androids, the semi-robotic, that we saw briefly.
Of course, well, according to the Doctor, that was in their heads, but how much of anything is really in their heads? So we kind of don't know what's real and what's not at this point. So yeah, it's also interesting that they just have this little device that can just get the TARDIS out of reality completely, which is interesting. I guess we really haven't had a use for that, and it's mainly just because the fluid links were going crazy that he had to do that in order to get out of the lava. Although presumably the TARDIS would have actually held up to that lava.
Now, was the lava from the last planet?
Yes, that was from the explosion of the Dominator ship lava coming in, so they had to get out of there.
Because I didn't remember them being threatened by lava at the end of the last serial.
Yeah, they said instead of blowing up the planet, if you blow up the Dominator ship, it would still cause a volcanic eruption on that island.
I remember that, but I didn't actually see that they were leading into this with the actual lava coming up.
Right. Well, it's because, I mean, they kind of make a joke of it at the end of last episode where the Doctor is just sort of standing outside the TARDIS, and then Jamie's like, we gotta go, there's lava coming, and then they rush back in. So,
okay.
It at the time, it seemed just like a dumb little joke, but that is apparently our lead into this one. So,
Shoot me down like a dog, would you? One of my crewmen never died without a fight yet. Krieger to her!
Jamie! Jamie!
good job. That was a very squeaky door.
Get out the WD-40.
So he is not yet completely under my control.
It does kind of sound like Troughton,
It is
though.
better this way.
I must fight. Oh, fight.
I'm back on a really fake set. It's been so long.
Listen, I've lost my companions too. Two of them, a boy and a girl, Jamie and Zoe. You haven't seen them by any chance?
Alas, no.
No. Well, I've got to find them. Perhaps you could help me if you know your way around.
It is not permitted.
Who says so?
The master.
The master?
He
That's
has
too early for the
articles of
master.
impeachment against.
Zoe!
Hi!
Is that you, Zoe?
Hi!
Who's that? Who are you?
Oh gosh, school children.
Well. Now it's my turn to ask you questions.
What can you make of a sword?
Huh?
Well, that's wood.
What can you make of it? Rearrange it. Think. This
Words.
is your last chance.
WORDS, words. Oh.
It's a puzzle, that's what it is.
Celestial toy maker all over again.
Oh,
No.
yes.
Oh no, I've done it wrong!
Doctor,
Oh, I'm glad to see you again. But you're not Jamie, eh?
Oh, my feet ache.
He looks like Bill
Sit down
from
and
Bill and
have a
Ted.
rest. Are they mad, or do they look like toy soldiers?
Yes. Particularly dangerous toys, too. Come along. Let's go.
Maybe it is something like the toy maker.
Run! No! We don't stand a chance! Stand still! Hold your ground! Come on, this is my dream! No! Stand still!
Let's see who this new Jamie is. Oh, Hamish Wilson.
This is a really weird episode. Maybe the real reason people wanted us to do all 5 in one video is just so we get it over with. Because this one is very strange.
Well, again, we've got some throwbacks to Celestial Toymaker. We've got a possibility, the mention of the Master, although we don't think this is the Master.
No, I could see how they could, like, retcon it later into being like, oh, this was actually the Master.
Yeah.
So,
And it's got, a couple of meddling monks in it, too, if you think about some of the things.
yeah. And it seems like when it cuts back to the two voices, and maybe this is cheating a bit because we're watching the subtitles as well, it seems like it's one person with two voices.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. And you're right, it does sort of sound like Troughton in the normal voice. But I don't know, that considering we've already had an evil Troughton in his run already with Salamander, it would be kind of odd to do that again. And I'm very curious, like, was this just a way to give Jamie a week or so off? Like, or did they legitimately be like, hey, we just want to have this, funny thing where we swap you out for someone else for a little bit. So,
By the way, reminding me of Salamander, I got to thinking about that a while back, that Salamander is such a weird name, because it's basically a reptile.
Yeah.
And I got to thinking, now Salamanca is a Spanish name, which could have, but I wonder if they went with the salamander idea because he was such a reptilian type character. He's just cold-blooded, heartless kind of thing. So anyway, just throw that in from how many ever episodes ago that was.
Yeah, that was a while ago, wasn't it? So
now, was Jamie there for the Celestial Toymaker, or was that?
No, because that was back with the first Doctor, so that was Steven and Dodo. So, I mean, this one is nice because we actually have the Doctor. That wasn't, because back then that was their first attempt at writing out Hartnell. So at least this is like, well, we have the Doctor. We don't have the real Jamie, but we have the Doctor at least. So, yeah, this is definitely a strange one. I'll also be curious about the writer because I think last time, the Dominators was written by someone named Norman Ashby, and someone said that's a completely fake name. It was actually the writers of the Abominable Snowmen.
Who would think up a crazy notion like this? I don't know. Fantastic mind.
Too kind.
This does sound
And
like
if I may,
the
I'd
Master.
like to return the
There we are. On.
That's definitely his eyes.
That's his nose. You can't mistake his nose, can you? No.
Yeah, you gotta get the mouth right.
There you are, you see?
Jamie, thank goodness you're back.
Back? What do you mean back? I haven't been anywhere.
You've got your face back.
I have? Yes, look. Oh, you're right, I have. Oh, that's much
Does
better.
have a mirror in his pocket?
Yeah.
Yes. Come along.
That was definitely a
Let's go
dumb
inside.
excuse for giving him a vacation. But that was really funny.
Didn't hear it creaking?
Yeah.
Well, there must be somebody here. Then we are meant to go on.
Yes, I think we are.
But that means that wherever we go,
Is
at
this,
any time, they know.
Theseus and the
They're
Minotaur?
expecting
Oh, yeah.
us.
Don't break.
Come on, Doctor, let's go. It couldn't be.
What?
Well, I know it's silly, but do you remember the story of the Minotaur?
Your name is Lemuel Gulliver. Your servants.
Gulliver?
Yes, yes. Oh, I'm looking forward to a long talk with you one of these days.
I should like that above all
Gulliver's
things,
Travels?
but It would not
I guess
be
so.
proper at this juncture.
Drop a rock on him, Jamie.
Yeah.
Rapunzel?
Another work of fiction.
Ouch! I suppose you know that hurts.
You mean this is your hair?
Of course. I don't object to people climbing it. I'm quite used to it, actually. But you would keep tugging so.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Well, I suppose you'd better come inside. For goodness sake, be quiet.
Might be difficult for him.
Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. It's so dreadful to be poor, sighed
Little
Meg,
Women.
looking down at her wardrobe.
What are they in the Cosmic Library?
Maybe. What else can we reference this episode?
Vanity Fair? Don Quixote?
Unable to find their companion in the labyrinth, decided to return to the cave in search of him, where a new terror awaited them.
Oh no, the script is being written.
Only the unicorn was alive first and then became a statue. Only this time... What? Have a care, Zoe. I have a feeling the situation is going to be
Medusa?
reversed.
It is coming to life.
Yeah, that is. That's some good stop motion.
One glance from her eyes would turn them to stone.
He actually has to be on the other side of that to be able to
We
read
know
it
what we have to do,
left to
Zoe.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good thing he knows how to read.
We have to say, Medusa does not exist.
He does.
Zoe,
Well, this is the
Medusa
third
is a
time.
myth.
All right, so we've got at least a small idea of what's going on now.
Yeah.
They're in the galactic library
Yeah.
where literature comes to life.
They're being thrown through a lot of fictions.
And the guy is the cosmic librarian?
Maybe. Something like that. I mean, I don't know how we got from we're not in reality to we're going through fictions at a library. Like,
Well, you're going from nonfiction to fiction.
I guess I suppose so.
One of my favorite quotes is the difference between fiction and nonfiction is that fiction has to make sense.
That's true. It is always funny, though, when you get something in a show or a movie where they say, now come on, this is reality. This isn't actually fiction or something. That's always funny. Or like if in a comic book, like, hey, now look, it's not going to work that way. This isn't a comic book or something. You know, those little moments are always funny. Yeah. So, yeah, just an interesting concept now that we understand it. It took a little bit. And the other stuff of like, well, some of the riddles still seem a bit strange, but I guess maybe there could have just been a book of riddles in this library, or if it is a library or not. So, and then obviously the whole, oh, Jamie has a different face. Clearly weak off for Fraser Hines there. So, a very clever way of doing that, though.
Yeah.
So, oh, these guys again.
I wonder if they're supposed to be from a science fiction novel.
Maybe. Maybe the novel was so good they developed sentience or something weird.
Well, that seems to take care of that, doesn't it?
I shall tear you limb from limb.
Oh, Doctor, be careful. He could do it, you know. The carcass has superhuman strength.
You will be minced meat.
Well, quickly, Doctor, say it. You know he's a fictional character.
But I don't. I've never heard of him.
Almost, Doc.
Don't do anything rash.
You know, Barbara would be proud.
Yeah. Throw him over the cliff.
I obey.
Well, good job.
His adventures in the strip section of the Owly Telepress.
Oh, a strip cartoon of the year 2000.
But you've been in the year 2000, haven't you?
Yes, but I hardly had time to follow the strip cartoons.
Well, you'd better start following this one. He's halfway up that cliff. Come on.
Well, all right then.
Oh, don't be alarmed. Won't you walk into my parlor?
Said the spider to the fly.
The spider to the fly.
Coming on.
Love the way they're working in all of these classical references.
Yeah.
Here, patiently waiting.
It's like Dr. Travers.
Yeah.
How long have you been here?
I left England in the summer of 1926. It was a very hot day, I remember. I think I must have dozed off over my desk. And when I awoke, but that's a long story. And for 25 years, I delivered 5,000 words every week.
You're a writer.
25 years, 5,000 words a week. Well, that's well over 500,000 words.
Yes, it was probably some kind of record. Anyway, that was why I was selected to work here.
And you're the one that's in charge of all this?
In one sense, yes.
Yeah, or is all this in charge of you? What is this intelligence you serve? And why was I brought here?
Well, as you see, I'm no longer young, whereas you, Doctor, are ageless. You exist outside the barriers of time and space. And you want me to to take over this unique situation, to take my place.
I refuse!
No, it's a book! Back out again!
No! Oh! Oh, push!
Push! Open! No! It's closing! No!
All right. Well, so not the master, but I could see how you could retcon this to be the Great Intelligence instead.
Yeah.
Which apparently, I said that last episode was actually written. I think it was last episode that was actually written by the writers of The Web of Fear and The Abominable Snowman, but something like went wrong or something, so they like left like really angrily. So that's why they weren't actually credited. They just made a fake name. So because of that, I think they were planning to do one more episode with the Intelligence. So I'm wondering if maybe that was sort of maybe repurposed into this. So, because I mean, there's an intelligence that this guy is serving that wants the Doctor. Yes, right now it seems to be, well, it's to create the fiction because the Doctor is ageless technically. So,
but he's also not a human, and they said they needed a human because only humans could write fiction.
Yeah, so, which is strange, I will say. So yeah, it's an interesting one, definitely. This strange fiction, literally, basically. So yeah, I also noticed. So I'm curious if the serial that he mentioned was it Captain Jack Harkaway, if that was a real thing, because I mean you probably noticed there is a character later on played by John Barrowman called Captain Jack Harkness. So I'm wondering if that was a real thing and that's where they got the name, or when they created that character they remembered that name and were like, let's make it kind of similar to that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've never heard of Harkaway.
Yeah, but he said it was in the 1920s that he was working on that. So, so I don't know.
Which again, if he was writing in 1926, and theoretically this is in the 60s, he's now 40 years older. So
yeah. That probably is the amount of time that he's been there is about 40 years. So, and it's interesting, they bring up, the Doctor is ageless, technically, even though technically at this point we still haven't seen too much. They still haven't established all the, regeneration rules or anything. It's still just, well, at one point he changed his face and got somewhat younger. Yeah. So,
play the credits. Let's see who the librarian master, Emrys Jones. What about the robots? Just there.
I was also thinking, it's like, oh, well, here he is, our villain. We've met him. It's like, oh yeah, we do have one more episode, though. But I guess just because they're shorter, they were able to get that one last cliffhanger in there. So
It's all over now, thank goodness.
The TARDIS broke up. Yes, you've said that, Jamie.
I'm tired. I think I'll sit down and have a rest.
Well, is something wrong, Zoe? Hi, well, where do we go from here?
Back to the TARDIS.
Oh, we can't do that. It broke up. Do you not remember? But
he's not a quick
keep
writer.
Saying the same things. Would you mind if I used your hair to get down there?
No, of course not. Everybody else uses it, so I don't see why you shouldn't.
Thank you very much. Now then, where can we attach the... Oh, yes, of course.
Yes, go on!
The enemy had been finally defeated by the Doctor. No, I can't say that. If I say that... I nearly fell for it, didn't I? Another 2 seconds and I should have turned myself into fiction. Just as I was thinking that all was over.
Oh, no!
It's not over yet, Doctor.
Not yet.
Oh, Jamie, sorry!
Oh, I can't believe that worked.
You are part of the master brain.
So the computer feeds off my thoughts, does it?
Correct. then it will create what I think.
No. You're now under control of the master brain.
Are you so sure?
You didn't think this one through, did you?
And now, Doctor, obey me.
No! Suddenly, the carcass came to their rescue.
I am at your command.
I love how this guy shows up.
But all the power had been used up on the soldiers, and it was useless.
Oh, you'll have to do better than that. Suddenly, a swashbuckling figure appeared. Poet and swordsman, the famous Cyrano de Bergerac. Remorselessly, Cyrano advanced on those.
I've played Cyrano before.
He found himself face to face with the fearless musketeer and peerless swordsman D'Artagnan.
Well, at least we can see this fight.
Substitute cutlass for rapier. Cancel Cyrano. Blackbeard the pirate.
Cancel D'Artagnan. Substitute Sir Lancelot in full armor.
And a horse.
It is a pity that we have to destroy such an intelligent mind as yours, Doctor. But you leave us no alternative. Disintegrate!
Just press buttons.
We shouldn't be getting out of here.
Yes, come on, Jamie, give me a hug with him. What do you want to bring him for? Don't argue, Jamie, give me a hug. You can't blow up a fictional character, Zoe. No, but what about us, though? Well, we'll just have to hope that the destruction of the computer returns us all to reality. And you, my dear sir.
Oh, do you mean I'm going home?
Well, I hope so.
Surely it could just as well send us into oblivion.
You mean we could vanish forever? Well, we shall soon know. Hang on, here it comes.
Whoop. Alrighty. And that's the mind robber. Alrighty. It's probably the most notes I've ever actually written for one episode. So. Alright. That was. So.
Very interesting.
Yeah, interesting, definitely. So. I mean, it is a little interesting that they don't show, like, you know, this whole thing about, you know, we ended up outside of reality and then we're in fiction and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, but at the end, they don't show if they actually got back. But I guess that's next week. So, an interesting idea, definitely. Yeah. And not a bad execution. It's just a little strange is all. So, okay. Well, I mean, I'm sure even though it is a decent amount of notes that I wrote down, we could probably blast through a bunch of these quickly. Yeah. But the first thing I wrote down is the void, which I guess it's, you know, sort of half and half. You know, it was sort of the void. You know, they're nowhere, but it was also just sort of another dimension because they were just transported outside of their reality to somewhere else. Yeah. So. Still a very interesting concept for the episode, definitely. And then let's see. We also had the whole thing of, you know, tempting them outside. Now, see, I remember, you know, people were saying that episode 1 was different to the other 4 episodes, and it was because it was mainly just, you know, them going outside the TARDIS and, you know, seeing what was out there beyond reality, I guess. And then you get into all the stuff with the labyrinth and the master and the fiction and all that. So the only real thing from episode 1 that kind of carries over is just the white robots.
Which makes me wonder, are the white robots actually in some piece of fiction? Because they never mentioned it in any of the episodes, and I don't ever recall reading anything about white robots. But,
yeah.
You know, I haven't read all science fiction, so...
Right. So it could be that, or maybe they were in some strange strip comic in the 20s or something. So I guess it could be that maybe they're from the comic that the Master was writing specifically. So maybe they were like the enemies, and so they just the intelligence. It just is the intelligence, really.
Well, because I'm thinking the term robots first came about in the 1920s with Karl Koppek's RUR, Rossum's Universal Robots. But they didn't look anything like that. They were more humanoid, more android-like. But yeah, that is possible. That because he's from the 20s, they are something that he had helped create.
Yeah. Then let's see. So then we had the Labyrinth from episode 2, which... So we had... originally I wrote down Sailor, but it was Gulliver of Gulliver's Travels, which was interesting.
I thought for a moment, just because of Lost Sailor and everything like that it might have been Robinson Crusoe. But Gulliver makes more sense because he dealt with the Lilliputians and the Brobdingnagians. I think that's the way you say it.
I don't know much about Gulliver's Travels.
It's a fun book. Again, I probably read it 6th or 7th grade.
I know they made a movie with Jack Black.
Yes.
And I'm just going to take a wild guess and say that wasn't very good.
Well, the problem is, of course, that's one of those novels where there's so much going on that trying to condense it down to a 2-hour film is just nearly impossible.
And that's nothing against Jack Black. No, I love Jack Black. But it sounds like a bad Jack Black movie. So, anyway. So yeah, he was interesting. We had the whole thing. We had the kids for a little bit. I mean, the kids serve their purpose of being annoying, definitely. Let's see. There was the face swap for Jamie. Again, just a very creative way of letting the actor have the week off. And then let's see. Zoe was trapped in the jar, which it's a good thing. You're like the Doctor. You understand some of these, quotes and riddles and stuff like that. Yeah. Whereas I guess I'm more like Jamie. I just hear it and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let's just try to get through this door.
Well, when a door is slightly open, it's considered AJAR. The door is ajar. But you read that as the door is ajar, and then Zoe appears inside the glass bottle.
All right. Let's see. The toy soldiers were also interesting.
Now that's from Babes in Toyland, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but or the Nutcracker. There's toy soldiers in the Nutcracker.
When you first kind of see, the first time you see him, it's kind of all shadowed and stuff. It kind of looked like the Black Knight from Monty Python, honestly. But that wasn't out yet, so. But then when it's like, oh, it kind of looks like these sort of soldiers, the first thing I thought was the Nutcracker. But then it's more just toy soldiers rather than the Nutcracker itself, I guess. So yeah, and again, because they don't really talk about like where they came from, so it could be what you said, or I'm gonna kind of doubt they're from the same place as the White Robots, because that would just be kind of strange. Like, what kind of story is this guy writing with toy soldiers and White Robots? Unless they are. Like, if it's toy soldiers, then maybe the White Robots are other toys. Then it's some weird 20s Toy Story or something. So, could be. Let's see. And then we had the unicorn as well, which obviously, they got a real horse to do that, just stuck a horn on its head. I do like that they then reused that exact same horse later for Lancelot, for just a quick shot of Lancelot in full armor and stuff, but that was really funny.
Now, if I recall correctly, right about this time there was a really popular song. I want to say it's by the Irish Rovers, called "The Unicorn," and it's the story of why you'll never see a unicorn is because they missed getting on the Ark. So look that up. Irish Rovers, "The Unicorn."
I think that
you might remember it. That
was a joke in Good Omens too, when Aziraphale and Crowley were at the Ark and they were talking about, oh, he's gonna flood the world. That seems kind of weird. And then it's like, hey Shem, that unicorn's about to make a run for it. Oh, no, there he goes. It's all right, you still got one. And that gives us the explanation. So yeah. I mean, it's an interesting idea to, well, first off, just with the fiction, just bringing in all these fictional things, and then the way to beat them is just, they don't exist. You have to remember that, which that was in the first thing I think of when they say that is like, oh, well, you just have to not believe in it. Wasn't that sort of the in Star Trek, the OK Corral episode, where they just had to not believe it and then they weren't killed, basically? So that's what I thought of. Let's see. We had the Master. I'm going to severely doubt you can retcon this to be the Master that we all know.
Because he was trapped there.
Yeah, he was trapped there.
He wasn't obviously a time traveler. He had been kidnapped.
Yeah, he was a specific person. But you could... I would say you could probably sort of figure out how to make this the great intelligence as well. So
sure, we're thinking about this 50 years later, but they missed a great opportunity there, because obviously this guy is made up. We've never heard of him before. But suppose they had kidnapped a real writer like Lewis Carroll, or somebody like that, somebody who was known for creating fantastic type characters. And although they had used the Queen of Hearts and the King of Hearts back in, was that the Celestial Toymaker?
I think so. Yeah.
But anyway, just to grab a real writer from Earth history and use them as the template there would have been kind of an interesting twist.
Well, it's also interesting because they say, oh, well, you need a human writer for the imagination and stuff. He's using characters that aren't his. He's repurposing other characters for this. So it just becomes some weird fan fiction, basically.
And another English versus American pronunciation. In the United States, ENSIGN is pronounced ensign, not ensign.
Yeah. Well, and we also got that with the Minotaur versus the Minotaur that they had. The Minotaur doesn't sound as impressive. Like it sounds like the minor Tor of the family. It's like, oh, there's the Minotaur, and then there's little shrimpy brother, the Minotaur. So,
and I always thought it was Minotaur because that was a legend from the Minoan civilization. Yeah. So it makes me wonder if the British pronounced that the Minoan on the island of Crete.
Yeah, possibly. That sounds like something they would say. So leave your angry comments about it down below the video. There was actually recently on a Doctor Who episode, they talked about a boogeyman, basically, but they pronounced it a bogeyman, which was interesting.
Well, that's actually the way it's spelled, B-O-G-Y. B-O-G-E-Y, bogeyman.
That was one of those I actually didn't argue on. I was like, oh, that's just an interesting pronunciation. That was one of those I specifically tried not to piss off the British with. But on everything else, I will do that.
That also carries over into modern language because in the armed forces, any unidentified object is considered a bogey, not a boogie. So.
Yeah. So, it's a strange word in general. So, pronunciation can vary on that one.
It makes you wonder if it comes from the French. I have no idea what it would be in French.
Oh, I don't know. All I remember from French is how to say I don't know and how to curse. So they specifically taught us that we had an entire lesson of how to curse in French. It was great.
Certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, je ne sais quoi is, I don't know. It was the most useful thing I ever learned in that class. And then
that's the first thing they taught us when I was taking Spanish back in the 60s. You have to learn how to say no hablo español. I don't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And whatever you do, don't say no explico espanisho.
Yeah. It's like I think I was watching a video where like someone went to Japan, but they actually didn't speak the language. They had someone else who did. And it's like, well, you just got to remember... well, now I don't remember what it is. But it's basically like how to say I'm sorry in Japanese. And they were like, oh, so I can just apologize forever in Japan? It's like, yes, that's the best thing you could possibly do when you go to Japan. It's just apologize for everything. They'll accept it. So, let's see. What else did we have?
How many nationalities can we culturally offend in one half-hour reading of Doctor Who?
Yeah. So let's see. We've gone to Europe. We've crossed over into Asia. So that's 2 continents already. We could go ahead and piss off North Americans somehow.
Well, I already somewhat insulted Salamander and Salamanca, so...
Yeah, that's true. So all we're missing is Africa, Australia, and South America.
Let's not go there.
All right. Let's see. Well, for the other fictions, we had Medusa, which I mean, that was pretty standard. Like you said, just use the mirror and stuff, and then again realizing, of course, that was like the 3rd time where it's like, oh, just say it's not real, and Zoe still wasn't, and having a hard time. It's like, okay, come on, Zoe, get with the program.
On that one though, it was partially because she said, I can feel her cold fingers.
Yeah.
And the doctor saying, no, that's marble. So, I mean, when you've got that tangible reality, it's hard to say it's not real, because, but doctor, I'm feeling it. And he goes, no, it's just the statue.
Yeah.
Just say she's not real.
Yeah.
And again, speaking of differences in pronunciation, this is 2 different British pronunciations, because they both mentioned the man's name as Perseus, but in the original Clash of the Titans, Laurence Olivier as Zeus pronounced it as Perseus, because it rhymes with Zeus. So, Perseus or Perseus.
That's very strange, definitely. So let's see. We also had Rapunzel. I like how chill Rapunzel is. Like, it's like, oh, I'm sorry I was, using your hair. And it's like, everyone does.
Everyone does it, yeah.
It's fine. So everyone was just nice about that. And then we had Carcass. I liked him. And especially because, obviously he's the one who's, made up, because it's like, oh, he's from... This was interesting that he's from the year 2000. A comic strip from the year 2000. What year was Zoe from again?
She was much further along than that.
Yeah, so why is she looking at a comic strip from 2000? Like, that seemed a little odd. Like, if she had said, it was just a comic strip from her time, that would have made sense. And I also like that then they reverse it to where the doctor can't fully say that, he's not real, because he doesn't know. It's like, oh, maybe he's a fictional character, maybe not. I don't know. I haven't seen that comic strip. Yeah. So that was kind of funny.
Very interesting detailing, giving him the fake muscles in his suit there.
Yeah, that was funny too.
So I mean, seriously, I don't remember ever seeing anything like that up until they started doing, like, the Tim Burton Batman.
Yeah.
Because when Christopher Reeve played Superman, that was, I mean, he had been working out to get that. They didn't have to enhance his suit or anything like that. And of course, the 1960s Batman, Adam West, I mean, he was just in a leotard that showed off that he was not very muscular at all. Yeah.
Oh, and the whole thing of Zoe fighting him, she never really explained that. Like, I thought she was gonna say, "Oh, that's how the hero always defeated Carcass" or something. Or was Carcass the villain? I don't remember.
I think he was supposed to be a hero, but
I think maybe.
Yeah.
So maybe she was using the lessons, because she kept saying multiple lessons of how to beat him. Yeah. So I was curious, if she was going to say, "Oh, that was in the comic book too," but then she never said it. And it's like, well, okay, was it that, or has she just been slacking this whole time and hasn't been fighting? Because we've been missing a warrior since Ian and Barbara. Yeah. So if Zoe can fill that role, that's great, but she needs to actually do it. Yeah. So let's see. And then we get the realization that the master is actually a writer. Again, I'd be curious if this was a real comic in the 20s. The Adventures of Captain Jack Harkaway. Because that is way too close to Captain Jack Harkness for it not to be, some sort of reference. So
we can look that up later.
Yeah, if that was a real thing, or if that was just something they made up for this episode, and then 40 years later, someone, when they were making new Doctor Who, they were like, that's a good name. Let me just slightly alter it a bit. There we go. That'll be John Barrowman's character. So let's see. And they did also say the whole thing of and they said like an Earth type man has the imagination and stuff, which that's always funny. When they do the whole oh, the humans, this is why they're so special to everyone else in the universe, I always think that's really funny in sci-fi when it's like, yeah, we're just the best because we have this that for some reason no one else in the entire universe has this. But they did say that the Doctor would still work even though he's not human. So I'm wondering if it's less that it's specifically a human or just humanoid. So the Doctor does technically count. And the bonus is that the Doctor is actually ageless, so he won't grow old and end up, just getting old like that guy. So, let's see. Also, we had the whole thing with, they hooked him up to the master brain, and it's like, oh, well, now you will submit, but they gave him too much power. And, immediately it's like, oh, you hooked him up to the thing that controls this place? Probably not your best idea. And so he just uses that against them. He just has to be careful not to include himself in the fiction, which was clever. And then that gave us the whole climax of... so it was originally... was it Cyrano de Bergerac versus D'Artagnan versus... it was Blackbeard versus Lancelot in full armor. So
now, strangely enough, in the play by Edmond Rostand, Cyrano references D'Artagnan. They are not rivals, but it is, again, Cyrano set during that same time period as the early... I was going to say 1600s, but that can't be right because it's earlier than that, if I recall correctly. So anyway, but that whole pre-French Revolution, so it's got to be somewhere between 1400s and 1600s. But yeah, D'Artagnan is... So seeing the fight between D'Artagnan and Cyrano, that was interesting. And then Blackbeard, who would have been in the 1700s, but then Lancelot goes back to Middle Ages or even before.
Yeah, so I would imagine once it's Cyrano, and then that triggers in the Doctor's mind. It's like, how about D'Artagnan? And then, it's like, well, I need someone better. Switch to Blackbeard. It's like, I gotta get out of this. So just a full armor. He has to specify full armor Lancelot, which also apparently includes the horse too. so that was interesting. And then, the last thing I wrote down was we are possibly getting back to reality. Which again, it's interesting that they don't end on that. Like, oh, we're back in the TARDIS. The other guy must be back to where he was, and we're good. Now, does he go back to the 20s? Does that de-age him at all? Like,
I don't know. Maybe that'll be at the beginning of the next serial.
Maybe. But yeah. Well, for 5 episodes, we actually kind of powered through that discussion rather quickly. Yeah. So, but it's, again, because, you can see I took down a lot of notes, but a lot of it is just, characters and everything that were brought in that you can just sort of talk about quickly. But yeah, it was a good episode.
There's one other thing, and this is only tangentially related. I've told you before, I've written a couple of plays. One of the plays that I wrote was an adaptation of the Arthurian legend of the Sword and the Stone, where Arthur doesn't know who he really is. He is the adopted child of Sir Kay. And, in the story, he learns from the animals and from his surrounding how to be a good king. And, of course, in the legend, as Kay... no, I'm not Kay. He's Kay's squire. He's Ector's son. Kay forgets his sword, and Arthur's supposed to go back and get one, and he sees the sword in the stone, pulls it out, takes it to Kay, and Kay goes, "Where did you find this?" And he goes, "I pulled it out of the stone in the center of the town." And they go back, and Arthur has to put it in, and Kay tries to take it out, and he can't, so they call the father, and the father comes in, tries to take it out, and finally Arthur takes it out. By this time, everybody's gathered and say he's the king. Well, that's the way I wrote it. That's the way the story goes. That's the way I wrote it. And then after I finished it, put it aside for a day or two, I went back and looked at it and went, I can't do that. If you're writing a play that's called The Sword and the Stone, the last moment in the play has to be Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone. But in the story, he puts it back in several times and takes it out. It's very anticlimactic. So what I had to do was literally rewrite a legend that was several hundred years old so that it would play on stage the way everybody thinks it will, which is the last thing Arthur pulls the sword out and everybody goes, he is the rightful king of England. So I'm just saying, watching this and watching them make stuff up like this was kind of, traumatizing for me, because I've been through that before, going, this sounded perfect when I wrote it, but now it's garbage and I have to go back and write it again.
To rewrite the entire story.
Yes.
Just
And
for the one moment.
The worst part of that is the original draft of the play, first and second act, I wrote in about 4 days. It took me 6 weeks to go back and rewrite that ending so that I could make it so that the last thing in the show was Arthur pulling the sword out and everybody going, he's the rightful king of England.
Well, then maybe that's exactly what this intelligence was looking for. Was someone who could rework fiction. So
Rewrites, edit,
yeah,
make it better.
yeah. So who knows? Maybe this writer, when he was writing Captain Jack Harkaway, he had to keep redoing things, send it back to the editor.
I love those weeklies, though. We talked about this before. Is the reading? I think it was Boy's World or Boy's Life, something like that. There were 2 or 3 of them that I used to get all the time, and really missed them when we came back to the States, because they had nothing like that at all over here. Now, I still was buying comics, buying the Marvel and DC comics and stuff like that, but those things come out once a month at best, and the other ones were weekly. So,
Yeah. And also, to put it in sort of the comic perspective, also reminds me, there was something where there was a whole thing where there was a story where, like, they introduced a new villain, but it was this, like, old man, and the editor of it said, this guy is not intimidating, you need someone else. So the author went back and was like, okay. So he brought out 2 new villains, and they were like these really strong, but they were like teenagers. And the guy was like, these guys aren't intimidating either. You got to give me something else. They're finally like, okay. So he made this like strong sort of insect-like creature and was like, okay, how about this? And it's like, he looks stupid. Go back. Okay. Second form. Nope. Go back. Third form. Okay, you can go with this. So just over the course of this story, what was supposed to be just this, older man, sort of villain, just kept evolving until eventually it's like, okay, here's a bug that looks good, basically. So that kind of reminded me of that with, who knows, maybe that guy had to go through that, or rewrites like you were saying. So,
by the way, I also ended up playing Merlin in that show. I'll show you that picture sometime.
Yeah, maybe I'd say maybe we'll put it up on screen or something, but first that requires both of us to remember that to put it in, because we had that picture, I think, of you looking like the Brigadier. I think it was like 5 months before we actually remembered to put that in the video. So if we do remember it, then here it is. If we don't remember it, or something, or if it's just too late, then I'll put in a Chumley. If I really forget to do that, nothing will happen. So
I will remember.
Yeah, so I guess that's basically it, though.
That's it.
What do we got on the schedule for next week? The Invasion. That's specific. So
Is this no? Because we've already had an invasion of the Daleks, haven't we?
yeah.
So this.
I don't think we're getting the Daleks for a while, so this is just a nondescript invasion. So,
The invasion. All right.
well, that is basically that. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go check those out. There's 2 different Doctor Who playlists, one for classic, one for modern. There's the subscribe button, there's the Patreon button, there's social media stuff in the description. You can go click on all that stuff. See you guys later.